Alrighty, everybody, we are live. Well, I guess better late than never. It's 9:39 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here in downtown Miami. I think this is Bayfront Park, I believe it is called. We are overlooking the bay as well as the Ferris wheel. It's a pretty clear night tonight, but there are some scattered lightning storms ahead, so we will be able to see that tonight on the stream. Apologize, there was no stream yesterday. Dealing with a lot of craziness at work. Work is getting extremely busy. But I wanted to talk about something that I think is pretty interesting. So, as everybody probably already knows, Tesla was cut from the S&P 500 ESG Index, which was a big surprise to me, because if we think about the term ESG, or sort of what that acronym stands for, it stands for environmental and social governance. So the first word in that acronym is environmental, and you would think that a company like Tesla, whose main goal is to help the world transition from traditional, I would say, gas or diesel powered vehicles to electric, would probably be ranking high up on that list, but it's not the case. No sir. No, sir. So Tesla was actually cut from the S&P 500 ESG Index. So what I want to talk about tonight is some of the reasons why they might have been cut from the ESG Index. Also, I want to talk about ETFs, or exchange-traded funds, because a lot of the times, and I think we've covered this almost ad nauseum on the streams, when we're thinking about ETFs, I always tell you guys, a lot of the times these different exchange-traded funds are packaged in a certain way for Wall Street to sell to investors to really just make money on the fee income or the management fees. And what I mean by that is you could have all of these ETFs out there that specialize in ESG, for example. So that ETF is marketed to investors, retail investors, sometimes institutions, to say, hey, if you buy this ETF, well, you're going to get broad-based exposure to companies that are really high up on the ESG spectrum. You can do the same thing with energy ETFs. You can do the same thing with, pretty much any sort of niche you want to put. There's probably an ETF on the market for it. But what a lot of investors don't do is they don't actually look under the hood of a lot of these ETF products. And there was actually a study done by Investors Business Daily about this time last year. And the vast majority of ETFs actually have very similar betas, or they move sort of similar in tandem, and they actually tend to track the general performance of the S&P 500. So for example, if you look in some of these ESG funds, you'll see the vast majority of the weighting to companies like Apple, to Microsoft, to Alphabet. And if you really compare that to the makeup of the S&P 500, it's really not all that different. So I think it's very important to be careful of a lot of these marketing tactics for these ETFs, because just for an example, the S&P 500 ESG ETF actually has more of a weighting, about 1% of its weighting, I think a little bit more, maybe 1.5, 1.6%, to ExxonMobil. Now, I get it, ESG isn't only about the environment. I get it. It's about how do you treat your employees? It's how many women are on the board of directors, all of this stuff that is important, right? I get it, but it sounds a little bit hypocritical and maybe a little bit distasteful, especially during these times. So we're going to talk about that. Once again, apologize for being tardy in streaming yesterday and being late tonight. But last but not least, everybody, let's see who we have in the chat. I have my friend Mohammed is here. Hey, Mohammed, good to see you. Says good morning, Tom, from Malaysia. Always a pleasure. Carson is here. Says good evening, Tom. What's up, Carson? Always a pleasure speaking with you as well. Sally is here. Says hey, Tom. Lucas says hello, Tom. Mr. Ming, Optimus Prime, welcome. Good to see you, everybody. Beautiful night here in Miami. Absolutely beautiful night. I hope you guys had a great Thursday. Jeff says Miami Heat is currently getting their rear ended handed to them. Yeah, so there is a basketball game, right? I heard a lot of people at the office talking about it. We have Al J here. Wendy England says perfect timing, good to see you. Optimus Prime says can markets go down more? They absolutely can go down more. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight as well. Ollie Jade says, hey there. Jones says, hello, Tom. Ahmad says, hey, Tom. How do I edit my video if it gets a copy claimed? And I do not have the time to edit them. But everybody, check this out. To kick off the stream, we are standing directly under the very famous Intercontinental Hotel right here in downtown Miami. If we continue to scan over, we will see the very famous Citibank building, but the taller building right behind it is actually the Southeast Financial Center, which is actually where I've been working out of for the past couple of days. Beautiful office building, the lobby is fantastic, and the good news is there is a relatively new WeWorks location on the 20th and 21st floors, I believe. Samantha R says, Tom, I'm excited for some dolphins. Hopefully we get to see some dolphins tonight on the stream. Hopefully we get to see it. Fred X is here, Samantha R. Hope everybody's having a good night. Guys, it's Friday tomorrow. That is the good news. It's been a crazy week. It's been a really, really busy week for me. You know, it's really funny. I've been working on a select, I would say, 3 or 4 very large opportunities, and probably for almost about a year, actually, maybe like 8 months to a year. And it's funny how all of those sales cycles are starting to close at the same time. Maybe it has to do with corporate budgets or something like that, but I've just been really, really crushed in the workload. So apologize if we've been missing some streams, we've been late on the streams, but it's been wild at work. Hopefully it hasn't been too wild for you guys, but hopefully you're doing well. Sebastian is here, says, hey Tom. Yo, Cosmo's scary, our great moderator. Good to see you, Cosmo. UPS1 says, boy, did Target get taken on the chin or what? Yeah. So, and I think that, you know, we talked about Walmart. So a couple streams ago, we dedicated the entire stream to covering Walmart's earnings as well as Home Depot. Walmart bombed big time. Home Depot was actually pretty good, very, very strong. But Walmart took it on the chin as well. Alan Wilson is here, says, good evening, everybody. What's up, Alan? Good to see you. Obviously, Cosmo Scary, the one and only ABX Girl. Good evening, ABX Girl. Always a pleasure to see you. Ollie Jade says, hey, Tom, I was in Miami last week. The weather was perfect. Yeah, Ollie, the weather has been fantastic here. You know, today was probably really the really first day in Miami where it was like, guys, it was really hot. I think it was 90, but it probably felt like over 100 degrees with the humidity. It was cooking today. And I was walking past this sort of sculpture on my lunch break. So it's a manatee, a sea turtle, and a dolphin here, all in one. Hey, the Mighty Bull, thank you so much for the $10 donation. You are way too kind, and hopefully you are doing well. You know, Mighty Bull, maybe we'll go over and see the Miami Bull tonight on the stream. So thank you so much. Ibrahim Azam is here. Mighty Bull, once again, thank you. Appreciate it. Bagels and Walks is here. Says, good evening, Tom, and have a safe walk. Thank you. So everybody, for those of you who are just joining, I wanted to briefly cover on the stream for the topic of tonight, Tesla, obviously Elon Musk's company that specializes, I'm not even going to give you guys a description. I think it's pretty obvious. They were taken out of the S&P 500 ESG Index. So ESG is an acronym called Environmental and Social Governance. And this has become a very hot button topic on Wall Street and in corporate America as of late. Now, this can be a very touchy subject, and I'll tell you why. Some people out there say ESG is a total fraud. It's mainly being used as a marketing tactic and a virtue signal to people from the quote-unquote woke crowd. So that's one side of the argument. Now, let's try not to get fired up here in the comments, but I'm just going to give both sides of the argument. The second side of the argument is people are like, look, we should be holding our corporations in America to a higher standard, right? We want to set the world example on a global stage to say, look, this is 2022. We need to be able to start acting a little bit more appropriately in terms of how we're treating our employees, how we're hiring employees, how we are treating the environment, so to say. So let's say if you're a big manufacturing company, do you have a clear-cut plan to show your shareholders how you plan to reduce your carbon footprint, things like that. So those are the two sides of the argument. I do see, just to give you guys a little bit of context on how I feel, I always like to give both sides of the argument and then put a little bit of color on how I feel about the situation. I think it's split about 50-50, and here's the reason why I say that. We've been talking about this on the stream for a while now, especially in relation to ETFs. A lot of the times, these ETFs on Wall Street will market themselves. The prospectus will be all, colored up with people planting trees and all this sort of nonsense because they're just trying to market you an ETF. So a lot of times, these big money managers on Wall Street will really just use the facade of environmental social governance investing to try to attract more AUM or assets under management. But here's the disingenuous thing. Here's where I think it gets a little bit disingenuous, and I'll tell you why. If you actually peel back the layers of the onion, so to speak, on a lot of these ETFs, what you'll find is that they're really almost all of them are really no different than the makeup of the S&P 500 in and of itself. And I'll give you an understanding of what I mean by that. So Investors Business Daily did a little bit of investigation into a lot of the ETFs on the market, and what they found is that one ETF could be marketing only solar. Oh, if you invest in our ETF, you're going to get a broad-based exposure to solar companies. But if you actually look at the companies they're invested in, the top two holdings are Apple and Microsoft. What does that have to do with solar, right? And then, way down, maybe it'll have like a 2 or 3% weighting in solar companies. I think the ARK Innovation ETFs do something similar. If you look at Cathie Wood's, and I'm not trying to take a shot at ARK, everybody does it. You can have different ETFs, and if you actually look at what the ETF owns, it has a very, very high weighting to the top 10 companies in the S&P. So it's like, okay, why don't you just buy the S&P? Here's the reason why. They use the ETF as a shell to garner more management fees from you. So for example, let's say if you buy an S&P 500 ETF, ticker symbol VOO or SPY, the management fee is going to be extremely low, probably like 0.04%, right? Virtually nothing. But if you buy an ESG ETF and it's all nice and you're going to feel good about yourself because you think you're saving the environment, if you look at the management fee, it's probably going to be about 1%, maybe even upwards of 2% for a lot of these. And I could see if that would be the case, right? I wouldn't be complaining if they actually had exposure to the vast majority of companies that are supposedly environmentally friendly, but they just have Microsoft and Apple. I mean, to give you an example in relation to the topic we're talking about tonight, I think the S&P 500 ESG ETF has a 9% weighting in Apple, right? So it's like, okay, I could just buy the S&P. You get the picture. And and another example is ExxonMobil is included in the S&P 500 ESG ETF, and Tesla's not. And ExxonMobil produces fossil fuels. So I think it's a little bit disingenuous, but I also get that there's other two components of ESG, which is social and governance. And supposedly the reason why they kicked Tesla out of the ETF is because they didn't like how Tesla was operating their factories. And I believe there was alleged sexual assault allegations against some of the people who worked at Tesla, but that's all alleged. I think it's getting a little bit political here, but I want to know your guys' thoughts. I want to know what you guys think. Jimmy Anderson, hey, what's up, man? Says hope all is well. Jimmy, always good to see you. We're about to walk past the Miami Heat game here, Jimmy. Ibrahim Azam, welcome. Gregory is here, says good evening, Tom. Good to see you, Gregory. Otto says, hey, Tom. Good to see you, Otto. Super123. Welcome, it's good to see you. I was speaking to you earlier. XOXX Bob's is Exxon. Yeah, so I mean, that's the thing that's a little bit interesting, right? So here was their argument. So the analysts that were putting together the ETF said the reason why ExxonMobil makes up about 1% of the ETF and Tesla's not even in there is because at least ExxonMobil has a clear and concise go-to-market strategy for reducing carbon emissions, right? They're actually taking steps towards doing that. They're appointing more women in director spots, whatever. This is just, I'm just giving you guys the details of the story here. But I think that's a little bit, I think that argument is a little bit long in the tooth. If your ESG should have a very, very high weighting towards the environment, and if you kick a company like Tesla out of the Esg Index or the S&P 500 Esg Index and keep oil producers, I think that's a little bit weird, right? So I'm not arguing for or against it. I'm just sort of trying to identify a little bit of, I guess you can consider that a little bit disingenuous. I mean, if you're marketing environmental stuff and social governance, if you actually wanted to make it real, then, you know, but I'll digress. Wendy England says, hey Tom, all corporations, no matter what, banking, retail, everything should be held for more accountable. Look at this SPAC nonsense. Better to have strong rules and make them follow them. Yeah, so Wendy England, you're right. So generally I do agree with you 100%. I think corporations should be held to a higher standard, especially in the United States, but I think if you're gonna do it, actually do it. Like, I think the whole argument here around ESG is, it's sort of like if you work at a big company and you know when you go to these all hands calls, a lot of the stuff that the CEO is saying is all nonsense. Do you guys kind of understand what I mean? Like, you listen to your boss speak about, oh, we're really trying to work on work-life balance and this, and you're like, oh my God, this is such crap. That's sort of what ESG is. So it's sort of just like, well, that's the argument. I'm not saying that's what I believe. I believe that a little bit. But that's sort of the argument. It's sort of like they're saying, hey, we really, really want to improve the environment. We want to improve the conditions for the workers. But then they turn around and say, oh yeah, we're going to put all the oil and gas producers in the index. So a little bit disingenuous. So if you actually wanted to move forward with that and be genuine, then I could probably get behind it. But if there's going to be a little bit of contradiction there, probably it's going to fall apart. We have GG NYC here. Good to see you, GG NYC. Welcome. FredEx says, hey Tom, they are punishing Elon for his perceived politics. I mean, perhaps, maybe. Emilio J says, hey Tom, yeah, it's all lip service, total BS. Perhaps. Yeah, the way I sort of think about it, Emilio, is, you know, at my old company that I used to work at, I used to get on these all hands calls and things like that. And it's sort of like whatever the company is projecting to the outside world, you know that's actually not what's going on internally. So it's all the corporate speak. Cove Creek 3 says, hey Tom, trying to take Elon down. He is not union. That's true. He is not union. Automakers are against him. The big oil is against him. That may be true. So maybe there's a little bit of nefarious activity going on over there. And look, I get it, guys. So I don't really want to hammer on one side of the argument. Super123, I do not have Facebook. But if you want to add me on Twitter, I am on Twitter at Walks Wall Street. I don't really want to hammer on one side of the argument because I think the point of the streams that I try to do is give both sides and then sort of get both ideas. But I think it's just, I think number one, Wall Street uses this idea of ESG in order to extract more fee income from clients. I think that's obvious. You know, they could just window dress up any old ETF and just put some marketing behind it on the cover of the prospectus, have a couple people planting trees with smiling faces and say, we're going to charge you a 1 or 2% management fee because we're going to invest into environmentally conscious companies. I think that's going on. But on the other hand, I do think people are genuine in actually wanting to bring about change at corporations, better working life conditions and things like that. But at the state of it that I'm seeing right now, I think the vast majority of it is nonsense. But it doesn't have to stay like that. Hey, Mario's here, says, hey Tom, I'm from Argentina. Love Argentina. Hopefully I will get a chance to go there. UPS1 says, if we're going to speculate, maybe Tesla got kicked out because he's got a lawsuit and investigations against him for nefarious activity. That's not a secret. Yeah, so that was actually one of the reasons. You're actually 100% right, UPS. What they said is Tesla has a couple accusations, I believe, about I don't think it was against Elon Musk particularly, but in somebody in the company of alleged sexual harassment allegations, right? So maybe that could be a reason. I also want to give another side of the argument and say, look, it's not like we can't walk through life thinking that, EVs aren't going to pollute the environment, right? You have to mine precious metals and rare earths in order to make these batteries, and that can damage the environment too. So it's not like, the electric cars are just made out of thin air and everything is perfect. You're going to have some environmental fallout from the mining of the rare materials that go into the batteries. So that's just an other argument for the other side, which I understand. But if that's true, and if that's the case, well, then why have ExxonMobil in there? What, just because ExxonMobil is saying, yeah, we're going to reduce the carbon emissions by buying carbon credits or carbon offsets or something like that? And I think the SEC is really starting to wake up to this idea, right? So Gary Gensler, I think, is catching on to the fact that all of these companies claim to be so environmentally conscious, but the only reason why they're quote unquote being environmentally conscious is because they're just buying a ton of carbon offsets, right? So they will pollute and hammer the environment, but then they'll buy a bunch of carbon offsets and say, okay, we'll just build like mangroves or something and plant a bunch of trees, right, as the carbon offset. And I think people are starting to realize that it's all BS, but that's sort of my take on that. Wendy England, agreed, you're right. Mike C says, hey Tom, not to mention the human rights issues with mining rare earths and metals. Yeah, so Mike, we've talked about that too on the stream. I think the vast majority of cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. We have slave labor and child labor there, which is horrible. So if we are going to be sourcing cobalt to make batteries and things like that, we need to be sure that we are doing it sustainably and not supporting these, quite frankly, terrorists in some instances that are controlling these mines. So I think that's another good point. That's another really, really good point. Mohammed says, hey Tom, do you follow the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp case? No, I refuse. I looked at it for like 1 or 2 days because YouTube kept recommending it to me. And then I just clicked, please don't show this to me again. So I'm trying to refuse to watch any of that stuff. But it seems like YouTube really wants me to pay attention to it. Max is here, says, hey Tom, good to see you, Max. Cindy Foley says, me too, who cares? The way I look at it, so here's my take on that. I'll give my take on that really, really quick, because that comment that I just made could come off as quite snarky. Here's why I don't care about it, and I don't think many people should. To me, those type of cases go on every day in America, but the only reason why it's being publicized is for the media to make money off of it. And it's a serious thing. It's not a joke, right? I mean, Johnny Depp and this lady, probably went through a lot of stuff, right? They probably have severe mental health issues. and the media just wants to, run ads on it and slam dunk on it and make memes about it. But at the end of the day, I mean, if what those allegations they're saying are true against Johnny Depp or against the girl, I mean, that's a private matter that should be settled, and it shouldn't be, memed upon, because at the end of the day, these people probably have serious mental health issues. And being in the public eye is probably going to drive them off the deep end. And I don't want to be a part of that. Brian is here. Good to see you. Hey, photos from around New York. What's up? Good to see you. So in a couple minutes here, everybody, I think the Miami Heat game is going to be let out. Does anybody know the score of the Heat game? XOXX Bob says, Tom, environmentalism has to be a global concern, not just the wealthy nations. So Bob, I think that's the comment of the night, man. I think what Bob said is the absolute comment of the night. And this is why sometimes I get upset with the left. And if you guys know me, if you've been watching the streams for a long time, you'll realize one of my top priorities is caring about and protecting the environment. But you also need to be a realist about it. And I think more so, a lot of people on the left of the aisle could sometimes throw stones and say, hey, America's horrible, America's terrible, we're not environmentally friendly. When in reality, we're probably one of the most environmentally friendly countries on the planet. When you have China actually building more coal mines, right? So if you look at other parts of the world, when us in the United States, we're actually turning down a lot of our coal-powered power plants, China is actually building more coal-fired power plants, right? And that's just one example. I'm not trying to pick on China. I'm just going to give you guys one small example. So to Bob's point, you need it to be a global effort, because if you really want to combat climate change or global warming or whatever you want to call it, you need everybody on the same page. But what it seems like everybody just focuses on America and says, we are terrible, we suck, America's killing the world. But if you actually look at the data, we're actually the only ones that are really doing anything about it. A lot of these other countries are polluting heavy. Herbert says, hey Tom, Boston 70, Miami 45. Ooh, they're getting crushed. But Herbert, thank you so much for the $2 donation. You are very kind, and I appreciate it very much. But we are right outside the FTX Arena. Let me see if I could zoom out a little bit. Elliott Wave Review says, hey Tom, I want to buy a condo or 2-bedroom house in Miami area and want to have mango and avocado trees in my yard like you. Which neighborhood should I look? So there's a lot of nice places in North Miami Beach. I think Kendall is a nice neighborhood. But the only thing that I would say, if you're buying a house here, it is imperative to make sure the house is not located in a flood zone, and which is almost impossible. Because at least if you're buying a condominium or something in the sky like this, I mean, if you're on the 50th floor, and even if the first 5 floors flood, you're probably not going to be affected by that at all. But in a house, if you have a hurricane or something, you could see the water levels rise all the way to your ceiling. So I would make sure you identify a neighborhood that is not in a flood zone. And some of the most desirable neighborhoods in Southern Florida, unfortunately, are the most flood prone. I'll give you an example. So Surfside, North Beach, sort of near like Haulover Inlet, there's a lot of beautiful homes there. Normandy Shores, but anytime you have a hurricane or even very, very torrential downpours, you could see water almost come up to your front door. So you really, really have to go to the town hall or the city hall, whichever sort of ordinance you're in, and request a flood map. They have to legally give it to you. It's on their website, and you have to make sure you're buying in flood zone X. And essentially flood zone X means that the property is pretty much never flooded ever. in the history of its existence, and it probably will never flood. So make sure you check out Flood Zone X, because I'll tell you a quick story, and I know I'm rambling on a lot tonight, but I'll tell you a quick story. 2015, and you guys know I'm from New York. I took a visit to a neighborhood called Normandy Isles, Normandy Shores, and this place, in my opinion, is the most beautiful neighborhood I have ever been to in my life. It is so gorgeous. But what I noticed one time is I was walking around the neighborhood and it started to rain like crazy, like the craziest rain I've ever seen. And the water levels, just from the rain, were literally flooding the streets. It was like probably a foot of water covering the street. And one of the houses had water all the way up to the front door. And this is just on a rainy day. So you got to look at the flood maps. Like, it's super, super important to do that. Hey, Marilyn is here. Good to see you. Says, what is the crime situation in Miami? It's a big city, so there's crime. John is here. Says, hey, Tom, Florida realtor here. And Tom is not lying. Yeah, and so John, there was one realtor I was working with that I didn't like. He was trying to show me all these houses. And I'm like, yeah, these are beautiful houses, but they're in flood zones. And you know what he told me? He's like, oh, don't worry about it. You just get flood insurance. I'm like, okay, pal. I'm like, all right. And I blocked his number. I'm like, dude, are you going to tell that to a client? Oh, don't worry about it flooding, just buy flood insurance? I mean, that's insane. Marilyn says, hey, Tom, what is the crime situation in Miami compared to New York City? Lots of innocent people are getting killed by stray bullets. I mean, it's a big city. You have crime in New York. You have crime in Miami. You're going to have crime in any big city, which is unfortunate. Arnold is here, says, hey man, hope you're doing well. Good to see you. John says, I never sell or buy a house below sea level. Yeah, and that's the thing. So John, a lot of those houses that are below sea level, they are the most beautiful homes I've ever seen in my life. But I think especially if you're on a budget and you're looking for a starter home, you want to try to mitigate your risk as much as possible. I mean, yeah, if you have multi-millions of dollars, then yeah, go ahead and plow millions of dollars into a house. Because if it floods, you know, you're probably going to have the capacity to fix that. But to your point, I agree. Omar says, hey, Tom, will you be taking the train? We may actually jump on the train right here because I want to go to Miami-Dade College. So we will. Ryan Royal is here, says, that's so out of touch. Fire/flood are still awful to deal with even with insurance. Yeah, it's terrible. You know, there's this one neighborhood in particular. It's right near 72nd Street in North Beach. That's also one of my favorite neighborhoods in Miami. But that place floods like crazy. So if you go across I guess it's called the Intercoastal. I'm still not really too sure about the geography here. I just moved here. But it goes Normandy Isles, and then it's like North Beach, 72nd Street and Collins Avenue. That location is beautiful, has a lot of nice single family homes, but I would never buy one because they flood like crazy. Yogi says, how do houses in flood zones survive in Miami? Well, I mean, they'll survive. Like, the point is they will survive because the majority of them are concrete block houses, but you just don't want to deal with that. Who wants to deal with flooding in their house? You know, and being from Long Island, you know, I saw a lot of people on Long Island go through Hurricane Sandy, and it's a mess. You know, you don't want to deal with that. Alan Wilson is here, says, Tom, that's the way people do in flood zones, and it pays off them over and over and over. Good to see you, Alan. Marilyn says, hey, Tom, you don't have to live in a flood zone to get flooded. Check the elevation. Very good point, Marilyn. Very good point. Yeah, Astro Alex is mold for years after a flood. Well, I think that's why I think all of them. I think that's why all houses in Miami don't have basements. Is that right? Because it would probably flood like every day. Our good friend NNB045 says if everyone starts deciding to live in flood zones, insurance companies would become more reluctant to cover. Yeah, so NNB045, you're spot on. And we were talking about this a little bit yesterday. So one of the big problems right now in Southern Florida is insurance companies are either, number one, they're just going under. They're going out of business, and they're not renewing their policies at all for a lot of these customers. So a lot of people are struggling with either one or two things. Number one, they're seeing their insurance premiums double year over year here in Southern Florida in particular locations. And this has been mainly due to the roofing scams here. In Southern Florida, there's a ton of roofing scams. So a lot of people are facing two problems, which is the one I just said, insurance premiums doubling, but also some people are waking up with letters in their mailbox from their insurance companies just pulling the coverage, right? And these people have to figure it out. You're seeing that more so in California. Yesterday, if you remember correctly, we were briefly talking about a lot of insurance companies are pulling out of places in California due to the risk level of wildfires. Now, one of the major reasons for that is because at any insurance company, you have analysts working there. And essentially, they run detailed financial models to see what the profitability on that policy would be. Well, California had the bright idea of saying you are not allowed to take advice from a scientist that says this particular house in 10 years will have a 50% more likely probability of getting in the mix-up of a wildfire or a forest fire, whatever you want to call it. So based upon that data or future data, you could call it future projections, California insurance companies are not allowed to price policies based upon future projections. But as you and everybody else knows, the vast majority of scientists and whatever you want to call it out there right now will agree that wildfires have been getting increasingly worse year over year in California. So based upon that, insurance companies are not just going to write policies that are going to be unprofitable. They have to account for their risk. But California is saying, no, we want to keep the prices of insurance premiums relatively low and affordable. So what we are going to do is say, no, you can't use future projections to reprice your premiums. So a lot of these insurance companies are saying, okay, we'll take a walk, and we are not going to renew any of these policies, and we're actually going to pull out of the state altogether. So big mess going on there in California. But we have the same problem here, not to that extent, but in terms of homeowners insurance going through the roof here in Southern Florida as well. Mario, good to see you. Chris Beeman is here. Good to see you, Chris. Jones says interesting talks. Lucas says news from my country in Brazil. Brazil's President Jair is against Brazil's federal Supreme Court. Lucas, I wish I knew a little bit more about that, but thank you for letting us know. I'll have to do a little bit more research into that. British Gray is here. Good to see you, British Gray from the beautiful Tampa, Florida. Cindy Foley says good night and be safe. Tired now, going to listen to Tom's rain videos. Hey, thank you, Cindy. So if you guys want to check out the standalone video I just posted on the channel, please check that out. Click my channel website or whatever you call it, and you could watch a 40-minute rain walking video in New York City. I think it's pretty cool. I think it's very well done. Mohammed says, hey Tom, when do you want to go to New Jersey? So Mohammed, I'm actually going to be in New Jersey on Tuesday. Funny you ask. I'm going to be in Atlantic City, New Jersey this Tuesday. So I will be there. Liquid Nate says, Tom, which state were you born? I was born in the greatest state out of all the 50, New York. Sabrina Fair says, the last video Tom posted of a rainy New York City is gorgeous. Thank you, Sabrina Fair. Liquid Nate, which state were you born in? I think I forget. Chris Beeman says, I listen to the rain walks all the time before bed. Yeah, you know, a lot of people, Chris, have been emailing me and saying those particular videos, they like to listen to them either right before bed, or number two, they like to listen to them while they're studying or working or something like that. So I think I'll keep those videos coming. Ballin' Bobcats says, hey Tom, no newsletter this week. Yeah, so guys, I have to apologize for that as well. I've been really, like, when I'm talking about getting really crushed at work, I've been getting like flooded with work. Right before I started the stream, I literally just ended work at 9:30 at night. But we will be getting back on track to our regular scheduled newsletter. And if you guys want to sign up for that, you could type !news, NEWS, in the chat, where I will send you a free financial newsletter covering a lot of the topics we talk about on the streams. So not only the latest news in Wall Street, also the housing market, fixed income, and cryptocurrencies. So if you want to check that out, just type !news, NEWS, and the Nightbot will drop the link. Hey, Fernando's here, says walks in Wall Street. What's the best neighborhood in Miami for young executives to live? That's actually a really good question. So here's what I'll say. Young executives, so there's a lot of office buildings in like Brickell now. So if you want to be very close to the office, maybe you could rent an apartment in Brickell or downtown Miami. But here's what I think is advantageous if you want to start a career in Southern Florida or something like that. I would look to save up some money for a down payment on a house. I would buy the house, and then I would house hack it, and I would go around to everybody in your office and ask them, hey, do you need an affordable place to stay? Do you need an affordable place to stay? Charge them $800 a room and have your roommates pay down your mortgage for you. And over the course of the life of the mortgage, you're gonna get a free house, right? So I think that's a very creative way for a lot of young people to break into home ownership, is by house hacking. Because at the end of the day, there was a massive study, the largest study of millionaires ever done in the United States. And the data shows that for the vast majority, 90% of first generation millionaires in the United States, meaning that they didn't inherit, it wasn't mommy and daddy's money or anything like that. 90% of all first generation millionaires in the United States has the vast majority of their net worth made up of equity in their home. So why is that a concern? Well, I'll tell you why. The reason why it's a concern is because pretty much ever since, I would say, 2015, right when we just started to recover from the great financial crisis, housing, to buy a house, has been increasingly becoming out of reach for the vast majority of Americans. And what has happened is it is turning America into a renter nation. So what that is going to do, if this trend continues, is that is going to absolutely wipe out and decimate the middle class. Because if we go back to the data, and it shows that the vast majority of first generation millionaires in America has the majority of their net worth in equity in their home. If we have millennials and Gen Zers not getting into homes or investment properties, then we're gonna have a generation of renters with no wealth. So I think now is the time to get creative. And if you want to keep a house within your budget, I would try to buy a house when you're very, very young, but I would turn that house into a cash flowing asset. So I would either Airbnb some of the rooms, or I would move individual tenants into each room and rent it out individually, so it would cover your mortgage entirely. This way, you're gonna get a free house. So that's sort of what my advice would be. Mike C says, Tom, do you think they will ever take away the capital gains exception on home sales? I don't think so. So correct me if I'm wrong, Mike. I think the first, your first home, right? If you live in it as your primary residence, you can have tax-free up to $250,000. So if your profit is up to 250 grand, and if you sell that home, you don't have to pay taxes up to 250,000. Is that right? And I do not think they'll do away with that. Right. So Mike, doesn't have to be your first home, right? But I think it's up to 250,000, isn't it, Mike? GGMYC says that's a good idea. Marty Lewis, good to see you. Says there are Putin sympathizers in the chat. Liquid Nate says it could be 500K, but I could be wrong. Bob says, oh, it's 500 for a married couple. Copy that. Tish TV is here. Good to see you, Tish TV. Astro Alex says, hey, Tom, what are your opinions on investing in EV startups right now? Well, I wouldn't invest in anything that doesn't turn a profit, especially now. You know, interest rates are going up, so a lot of the high beta growth stocks are going to get crushed, and many of them will even go to zero. So I think now is a good time to sit out until we have a follow-through day, or try to do some deep securities analysis on companies and try to do some value investing in these times. But so if you guys have been reading the newsletter, we talked about a lot of those special purpose acquisition companies, or the SPACs. Like Lucid Motors is another EV company, went public via SPAC, and I essentially created a short thesis on it, and I sent it to everybody. I'm like, these companies are going to get crushed. These companies are going to get pounded when rates go up because there's no profits. They don't produce any cash flow. They don't generate any cash flow. There's no earnings. And with Lucid's case, there's almost no revenue. So these things are going to get pounded like you've never seen. And I think that's going to continue. Laura M says, hey, Tom, what city do you think is the next big tech hub? Austin, Nashville, Miami, or Raleigh? So Laura, I think that's a good question. I was thinking about this, and I'm going to give a little bit of a creative answer here. Ooh, nice. So my answer is, I think that you're going to see the entire United States become a tech hub, because in order to attract top talent right now, let's say if a company wants to attract the best software engineers possible, well, in order to do that, you're going to need to provide them with an extremely flexible work schedule, which means, i.e., remote work. And here's the reason why I say that. I'll tell you why I say that. There was some breaking news 2 days ago in the Wall Street Journal out of Apple. And Apple was actually planning on bringing back all of their corporate employees to the office for 3 days a week. The employees threw an absolute temper tantrum, so much to the fact that Apple is now walking back and delaying their return to the office because they didn't want to lose all of these employees. So if we know that the vast majority of people who work in tech value a remote working structure, well, then technically anywhere could be a tech hub. You know, I could move to North Dakota and be a software engineer at Apple. I could move to Texas and be a software engineer for Airbnb. You know, you could really move wherever you want. It just depends on personal preference, because a lot of these companies now, like for example, Airbnb came out, the CEO of Airbnb made an announcement that said, we will not reduce the salaries of any of our employees should they choose to leave Silicon Valley and move elsewhere. You will have the same salary, you won't take a pay cut, but you're allowed to work anywhere. So I think now it just really depends on where people want to live. If that means they want to live in the suburbs, well, then I think the prices of homes in suburbs will continue to be bid up, things like that. But I think it's for the best, you know, but companies are still going to be steadfast in trying to get employees back to the office, but I think they're going to be met with a lot of resistance. Mike C says, Apple software development is such a team effort. I'm surprised 100% remote work is possible. Yeah, I mean, I think you have a good point, Mike, but supposedly there was a ton of, I guess you could say, uproar about the return to the office, and essentially all of the Apple employees said we're not doing it, and Apple is actually walking back their return to the office date, which essentially means they're probably not going to bring anybody back. Maybe 2 or 3 days a week, maybe. You know, a lot of the investment banks, for all of our investment bankers in the chat, I think that has been the one industry that has been the strongest about return to office. You know, Jamie Dimon has been very vocal, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. He's like, look, we got to get people back in the office. And I think you're seeing a lot of churn from investment banks, people making the jump from finance, investment banking into tech. Wendy England says the horses have left the barn. They're not going back. The LT Prod says, I wonder how much organized crime and terrorist profits from carbon offset scam. Probably a lot. And I think that gap is going to close relatively quickly because the SEC is going to put the hammer down on that. NMB045 says, hey Tom, they may not cut their pay, but they may cut their other benefits. Interesting. Interesting. Ryan Morrell says, Tom, it seems like it's in the company's best interest. They wouldn't have to pay / rent energy costs in large office buildings. Yeah, that's another good point. Well, something that I noticed, I've been working at a lot of those WeWork offices, and I've noticed a lot of signage on some of the individual, I guess, miniature offices that house like 15 to 20 desks. I've been seeing S&P Global. I saw one for Goldman Sachs. So maybe a lot of these companies, instead of signing like multi-year leases, they'll just say, look, we're going to open satellite offices around the country and we could come in and meet every couple days. So maybe they're going to start doing that. Who knows? But if you guys are enjoying the stream tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new, because we go live 5 nights a week and we love to have you back on the stream. Cons' office space needs to be turned into lofts. I agree with that. Marty Lewis, thank you for joining. Much appreciated. 05 says, hola amigo, welcome. 05 is from Corpus Christi, Texas. Always a pleasure. So I'm trying to cross the street here, but I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to do it. I want to check out some of these ships over here with you guys. I think the Coast Guard is here, so we may have to go around the barriers, so hold on. But everybody who's just joining, real quick. So the topic of tonight's stream was Tesla has now gotten removed from the S&P 500 ESG Index, causing massive outroar from Elon Musk. He blew up on Twitter. He was very upset, which I do understand, because if you think about it, Tesla and Elon Musk are making a conceited effort into trying to adapt or move the United States and other parts of the world away from traditional gas and diesel powered vehicles to EVs, obviously reducing carbon emissions. So you would think that would be an inclusive factor into an ESG index. Well, that's not the case. So there was a big argument saying that it's not only about the environmental impact, it's about the social governance and all this other nonsense. I want to use nonsense very lightly because I do think there are some aspects of ESG that are real and that are good, but I think a lot of it now is getting political and, you know, I could use another choice of words, but so essentially, here's the problem that I have. In the S&P 500 ESG ETF, ExxonMobil makes up about 1.69% of that ETF. Tesla's not even in the question, not even a part of it. I mean, ExxonMobil is one of the largest producers. Hold on, let me cross the street here. One of the largest oil companies out there, and they're in an ESG ETF and in an ESG index. I don't know. I think it sounds maybe a little bit. Maybe they're being contradicted there. So maybe it's a little bit of a political game, but I think the reasoning that they're claiming why they got kicked out of the ETF is supposedly there are some allegations against Tesla of poor working conditions in the factories. I believe some sexual assault allegations against the company. Again, this is all alleged. I'm not saying this is the case. I don't know. That is just what they're saying as to why Tesla is not a part of that ETF anymore, or that index. I think a little bit disingenuous, so I want to know your thoughts. Roberto says nice Rolls Royce and Bentley. Yeah, there's a lot of nice cars here in Miami. Good to see you, Roberto. Clara is here, says hello. Brian Suarez says hello from Ecuador. Love Ecuador. Blue Ice says, hey everybody, hope everybody is great. Beautiful stream. How do you feel about the crypto market right now with the Luna crash? Was crazy. Would love the market to go up again so I could buy a penthouse. Well, I think the vast majority of altcoins are scams. You know, I was very vocal even before the Luna collapse to not get involved in any of this nonsense. So I think everybody pretty much knows my take on that. But I am extremely, extremely bullish on Bitcoin for the long term. But I was looking at some on-chain metrics recently. And for the average cost basis for a long-term holder, or the whales, is right around, I think, 14 or 15,000. So I think in order to have a proper shakeout, to really wash all of the speculators that say, oh, I want to buy all these crypto stuff so I can get rich quick, in order to wash all those guys out and crush all their hopes and dreams, I think they're going to take this market lower. If you follow me on Twitter at Walks Wall Street, I've been talking about that 200-week moving average, which is right around $21,000 per Bitcoin. I think we could have some sort of a violent correction to the 200-week, and then a final flush lower, like a really quick flash crash lower to like 14,000 to flush everybody out, and then I think a new bull market cycle will commence in Bitcoin. In terms of the altcoins, I really don't follow them. I think the vast majority of them a little bit nefarious. Also, I think if you know anything really about securities law, the little stuff that I do know about securities law, I don't know much, but I would say probably I know most and the vast majority of people. By textbook definition, a lot of these alternative coins or altcoin projects are securities, right? So the founders are issuing themselves quote unquote coins, then they are soliciting to them to other people. So those are in fact securities. So I think if the SEC ever starts to clamp down on that, it's not going to be pretty. So that is my take, but I could be wrong, and I admit that, because I know I get a lot of heat when I say that, but that is my take. But everybody, check this beautiful, beautiful Coast Guard boat out. Wow, this thing is cool. You know, this is such a unique boat here. So this probably explains why I saw all of the Coast Guard people walking the streets of Miami today. So we appreciate the Coast Guard, everything that you guys do. It's a very, very difficult job, the Coast Guard, and really any of the military forces we appreciate immensely here on the channel. You know, I was reading a Wall Street Journal article that they actually did on Miami specifically in relation to the Coast Guard. So to put things in perspective, you know, I was thinking about this over the weekend. Yes, the stock market is falling. Yes, we may fall into a recession, but I always try to be an optimist, right? So regardless of the market, the stock prices and things like that, in comparison to the rest of the world, people want to come here to try to get a better life, to earn more money, to start a business, to have property rights, individual freedom. So listen to this. Wall Street Journal reporting over the weekend. There has been a record number of immigrants trying to come to the United States from places like Haiti and Cuba. And these folks, the Coast Guard, are seeing these people, and they're intercepting their boats and their rafts in the middle of the ocean. And it was such a heartbreaking story because these people in the Coast Guard are like, we fly over these folks and they're literally on blow-up mattresses trying to make a voyage all the way from Haiti, all the way from Cuba, just to get to the United States, to the coast of Florida, just so they could start a new life from nothing. So if somebody is willing to cross thousands of miles or hundreds of miles across the treacherous ocean on a blow-up air mattress, just to have the opportunity to live in the United States, I mean, I think we should be extremely appreciative and put things into perspective like, dude, you're living in the United States, you have free will, you could go out and do whatever you want, you can create a business, you can get another job, you could educate yourself freely, you could practice whatever religion you want, you can marry whoever you want here. There's people out there that are literally on blow-up air mattresses trying to reach the shores of Florida, risking their lives. The Coast Guard has estimated probably thousands of people, hundreds if not thousands of people have probably died. And they said because there's increasing instability in places like Haiti and Cuba, and in those places, in addition to the government instability, they don't have the proper vaccines for coronavirus. So people are dying, they can't get the appropriate medical care. So I think that story really put it into perspective for me to say, look, no matter what we're going through here, a little bit of a bumpy time in the economy, the people have got it a lot worse. And I think that the majority of people around the world would be happy to trade places with us. So we got to keep pushing, we got to keep trucking, and whatever you want to do, whatever you want to accomplish, you have to attack and you have to pursue it, because there's a lot of people that are willing to risk their lives to cross the ocean on an air mattress to start with nothing. So that sort of put it into perspective with me. If you guys want to check out that article, it came out on the weekend edition of the Wall Street Journal. I couldn't even believe it. They were interviewing one of the pilots who worked for the Coast Guard, and he's like, we're dropping these people food and water. They're barely hanging onto the rafts. It's tragic, and you can't stop these people from coming because they're so desperate. It's horrible. It's horrible. Wendy says Haiti and Venezuela. Yeah, so there's a lot of instability in Venezuela as well. You know, you have extreme hyperinflation. So these people are just trying to get to the United States at any cost. It's really, really crazy. Hey, we have Chris here. Hey, Chris, good to see you. So I want to show everybody, this guy has his boat parked here. Beautiful boat, by the way, right outside the FTX Arena, where the basketball game is going on. Beautiful night here in downtown Miami. Hey, Sherry Rodrigo is here. Says, Tom, we live near the Coast Guard Academy, where the Eagle calls home. Very cool. RV Not 111 says, what do you do for a living? I am in enterprise tech sales. So I sell software and hardware into the Fortune 500 and Fortune 50. Clara says, Walks on Wall Street, how long are you staying in Miami? I live here now. I live here. Oh, I think that was a dolphin here somewhere. We got to be, so guys, I know I'm talking a lot, but we got to be on Dolphin Watch because we could see some tonight. Line Sync is here. Good afternoon, Line Sync. Says, hey Tom, here people are doing the same, crossing the English Channel to the UK. It takes hundreds of days. Wow. Oh, hundreds a day. RV Not 1-to-1 says, no more New York City. Yeah, so I split my time about 50-50 between New York City and Miami. So 50% of the time I will be here, 50% of the time I will be in Miami. Sarah G says, hello Tom, I got my first sale. Hey, there we go. Love that. Congratulations. Fantastic. What are you selling? Are you in tech sales? Are you selling something else? Guys, wow, look at this. These are like some classic sailboats here. Nicholas Dura says there was a shooting in Buffalo, New York. I know about it. I try not to think about it. It's so depressing. Tish TV, good to see you. Sarah G says, you inspired me. Very cool. Well, let us know what you're selling if you want. Clara says, walks from Wall Street, what is your dream occupation? Enterprise tech sales. BP says, Tesla's removal from S&P. Topic of tonight's stream, BP. We just spent the first hour of the stream talking about that, but you're 100% right. So Tesla was removed from the S&P 500 ESG Index. But the funny thing is, ExxonMobil makes up about 1% of the index, or the S&P 500 ESG ETF. So we were talking about this topic in a multifaceted way. So the first way we briefly talked about, okay, is this ESG thing genuine or is it BS? The second thing is we were talking about ETFs specifically, or exchange traded funds, and why it's so important to not just buy an ETF by looking at the name of the ETF. I'll give you an example. Let's say if there's an ETF or an exchange traded fund that specializes in, air quotes, that specializes in solar power. You look at the prospectus, it's marketed as, oh, if you buy this ETF, you're gonna get exposure to a lot of solar companies. Well, Investors Business Daily actually did a study, a broad-based study on ETFs, and they found that the vast majority of ETFs that are marketed a certain way actually almost have the same exact betas as a regular S&P 500 ETF. So I'm gonna leave this to you guys for some homework. Pull up any ETF that is niche specific. It could be solar, it could be ESG, and I can guarantee you the vast majority of the weighting in that ETF is probably Microsoft, Apple, all the major companies that make up the S&P 500, and then at the very, very, very bottom of the ETF, it'll have exposure to the companies it actually talks about. So I think a lot of the times Wall Street will just use ETFs as a way to garner more AUM and sucker more management fees. Wow, check this guy's boat out, everybody. Pretty cool. Let me try to get the focus right. My camera's acting a little wonky tonight. Shauna Rock, good to see you. Sarah G says, hey Tom, we help businesses and nonprofits grow and flourish. Love that. Love that. Good stuff. But yeah, I think, as we talked about, as we covered, I think a lot of the ESG stuff is just, a lot of these Wall Street firms will use ESG as like a facade to market different products, right? So they'll say, oh, invest in our mutual fund, invest in our ETF, because we take ESG and environmental and social governance and social justice stuff so seriously. So invest your money with Morgan Stanley. I think they use it as a marketing tactic. They're a little bit, they really lay it on thick. I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard that term. When someone's laying it on thick, it's sort of like, all right, guy, like, cool it a little bit. Line Sink says, I hate to think that boats, what the boat's running costs are, yeah. BP says solar ETFs shine as EU outlines plans for energy independence. Yeah, and if you look at the makeup or the weighting in those ETFs, like I can guarantee you the first or second holding is probably like Apple or Microsoft. Wow. It is beautiful out tonight, everybody. Hey, Miami Walking and Driving Tours says, hey Tom, the problem with that is when they don't raise you ESG, none of those funds can buy your company stock. Yeah, so you're exactly right. Now we are gonna hold companies, I think you're gonna start, and it's actually already started, they're going to start to assign companies ESG scores, right? So they're going to say, if you don't have this amount of ESG score, we are not going to buy your stock, right? So a lot of the times you'll see different mutual funds, maybe the business is really profitable, but you physically cannot buy the stock because it doesn't have this high of an ESG score. I think a lot of that stuff is going to continue to roll out. Just like in some of the top mutual funds, some of the times they're restricted on what they can buy because if the company doesn't have earnings, sometimes you're not even allowed to buy it as an institutional investor in some of these mutual funds. Not all of them, but some. And that's why I always say, make sure you look at institutional sponsorship whenever you're looking to buy a stock, because at the end of the day, the stock price isn't going to go up unless there's some big players in the stock. Yeah, Ed Dunkel says, Tom, let's just think that ExxonMobil's PR is better than Elon Musk's. Probably is. Yeah, Miami walking and driving tours, like it's like the ratings from the rating agencies. You're right. And it's sort of like this. Let's say if you're an analyst at Goldman Sachs, or you're an analyst at a different investment bank, or whatever, at any investment bank, and you put out a sell rating on a particular company. Well, that company's probably, if they ever want to do a secondary or they ever want to, raise capital again. Oh, thank you. They're probably never going to use your investment bank. And that's why there's a lot of times I always say, if you guys follow me on Twitter at Walks Wall Street, I always say this. I say, take analysts' reports with a grain of salt. Because number one, analysts have no skin in the game. These people don't have any of their money at risk in these stocks. And number two, a lot of the times they'll just put out bullish reports on these companies because they want the underwriting business, right? If they do a secondary or something like that. But if you have an analyst at, say, Deutsche Bank come out and trash this stock, well, do you think that company XYZ is going to hire Deutsche Bank if they want to raise additional funds or do any sort of advisory services? No way. So I think there's a lot of conflict of interest on Wall Street in that way as well. And that's why you tend to see a lot of overzealous analyst reports. David is here, says, does Lucky keep pulling the football on Charlie Brown? Muhammad says, hey Tom, if you come to Asia, pay a visit to Malaysia, good place for vacation. I will. And thank you for the invite, Muhammad. I appreciate that very much. So if you guys look straight ahead, you could actually see the main scoreboard inside the FTX arena here. So speaking of FTX arena, I think FTX bought a massive, massive position in Robinhood, broker-dealer. But if you guys are enjoying the stream tonight, feel free to leave a like button on the video and subscribe if you are new. Let's go over and see what this guy's got, because we were talking to him the other day, and maybe he has some fish or some dolphins or something. Let's see if we could find anything. We'll be on Dolphin Watch tonight. I think we got one. Keep your eye on this vicinity. You're probably going to see a dolphin pop up. Let me know in the chat if you guys see anything moving around in the water. Yeah, Miami walking and driving tours. Is that dolphin family was beautiful? It was. Hopefully we see another one tonight. Maybe we'll ask this guy if he's seen any. We spoke to him last time on the stream, if you guys remember. Very nice guy. Fantastic Frankie says whistle. Yeah, maybe they'll come if I whistle. Hey, Aussie's here. Says, hey Tom, where exactly are you, please? So we are directly behind the FTX Arena here in downtown Miami. This is actually where the Miami Heat play basketball, right here. And if you look all the way in the distance, this is, I believe, Bayside Marketplace. Hey Herbert, thank you so much for the $5 donation. Says, Tom, most CEOs are not as out front as Elon Musk, and they don't have the public perception that he has, which is unlikable. So that is true. Elon Musk sort of has the no F's given mentality. You know, a lot of the other CEOs play the corporate go along to get along, I agree. David says, hey Tom, that was a response to Nick asking if Biden was going to cut loans. Cut what loans? I have to go back in the chat. Let me look. Hey, Matt is like, go for a swim, Tom. We may jump in the water tonight, everybody. Fantastic Frankie's like, Tom, you're going to summon dolphins? Hopefully we do. Jerry says, come and visit Afghanistan. It is a great place. You know, I was actually watching a YouTube video, and Afghanistan looks beautiful. Oh, student debt. Nicholas's student loans, or if he's lying. So I think you guys know my take on that. If they do cut student loans, it's going to be very, very close to the election, so they could just, you know, make a lot of people feel happy. But here's what I feel like, and you guys know my take, and it's a very controversial one. The reason why we are in this mess with student loans in the first place is because the government is subsidizing all these student loans. So essentially, you have stripped any sort of free market capitalism out of the college market. So here's what I mean by that. If you're a private institution like a university in Miami or something like that, there's no incentive for you to lower the price of your tuition at all. If anything, there's actually incentive to raise the price of tuition. Now, why do I say that? Here's why. If I walk into student loan office and say, I want to go to the University of Miami, I have no money, I have no credit score, I'm actually in a lot of credit card debt, but give me a loan for $75,000 a year to attend the University of Miami, no questions asked, I'm going to get the loan because the governments are going to back it. So if that's the case, if all of these colleges and universities know that anytime a student wants to borrow money to go to college, that they're automatically approved 100% and the American taxpayer is going to backstop that loan, well then why not make the price of college $5 million a year? Why not make it $20 million a year? So there's no incentive for these colleges to lower prices or be fiscally responsible because the government is subsidizing all these loans. But let's say if the vast majority of people couldn't get their hands, let's say if 18-year-old kids, 17-year-old kids could not get their hands on a $150,000 loan to go to college, well, there'd be a lot less people enrolling into colleges, forcing a lot of these institutions to start being price competitive. But that's not the case. So what happens? A lot of these schools get really, really bloated on administration staff. They hire all of these employees that don't do anything. They build more athletic facilities. They build more swimming pools, and they make these colleges so extravagant where it's like an adult playground instead of getting an education. And that all comes about because the government is subsidizing these loans. So there's no price discovery in college education. So here's what I propose. I think we should cancel all student loans. And this is coming from somebody who doesn't have any student loans. I went to a very, very cheap college that was $2,000 a year or semester. We should cancel all student loans, eliminate the burden from all of these people, but the day we cancel all of these student loans, we should automatically 100% remove the government backstop from the market and stop this ridiculous insanity of subsidizing all of these student loans. But that's not going to happen. What's going to happen is they'll cancel all the student loans and then they'll just rack up the debt over again. But that's my take. So I'll give you guys one more beautiful view here. Yeah, Mel says I paid my student loans off myself. I worked my A off while in school and after. Yeah, so Mel, you're 100% right. I worked 100% throughout school. So, if we cancel student loans, it's going to send a horrible message that, it was sort of a slap in the face to all these kids that worked really hard, got 2 or 3 jobs and paid their way through school. And I get that argument, I do. It's horrible. But I think the only way for us to move forward, if you're going to cancel student loans, if you're going to cancel all that debt, then you have to stop this insanity of subsidizing the cost of these loans. You got to get the government out of this, and then it'll be fixed. But that's never going to happen, so it's almost not even worth talking about. Ryan Royal says it's kind of interesting that college enrollment dropped during the pandemic because the students didn't want to pay tuition and then sit at home. Yeah, well, if you think about it like that, Ryan, why would I still pay $75,000 a year to go to college if I don't get the whole experience, right? And that just goes to show you that the vast majority of people that are going to college is to go for the experience, is to stay in the dorms, to smoke weed, do all that stuff. And I know the vast majority of people don't want to go for that reason, but there's a lot of them that go for that reason, right? So if you're going to spend $75,000 a year to sit on a Zoom call with your professor, you're really not getting any value out of that, because I think the biggest thing in college is you're supposed to go to build a network, to network with, your peers, because a lot of those peers could be your coworkers someday. So why don't I just sit home and teach myself how to code, teach myself Python, C++, Java, JavaScript, HTML, C#, Node, all these different languages. Why don't I just teach myself how to code and get a job making $100,000 from home? Why do I need to go to college to do that? Now, I get college is good. I'm on the side where college is good. I think college in and of itself is a good thing, but the price is just out of control. We need doctors, we need lawyers, we need scientists, we need kids going to school, but we don't need to burden these kids with crippling debt. That we don't need to do. Yeah, Jonathan Francis, hey Tom, and most campus housing doesn't offer a refund either. That's true. Future Endeavor says I went to college where the security guard was also the janitor and a student going to the same college. Oof. Ryan Royal says I agree. I could have borrowed money and finished my degree. Yeah, Mel says so I could have just chilled and taken out more loans instead of working full time and going to school. That's true. There's, it's a horrible situation, and people are going to be very upset either way, I think. Oh, look at this boat. Check this out. Yeah, I don't think there's any easy answer, but we definitely need to stop subsidizing all these loans. And I think that we need to start to educate these 17 and 18-year-olds about ROI, or return on investment. Now, if you're going to go to college and take out a $100,000 loan to study something like criminal justice, well, you're probably not going to get a good return on investment with that. But if you go to college and take out a $75,000 loan to study computer science or engineering, well, the ROI is probably going to pay off, right? But if you go take out all these loans and study English, well, there's no return on investment there. And it's really not these kids' fault, because all they're told is just go to college no matter what and take out all these loans. They don't think about, okay, what should I major in? Okay, what job am I going to get when I come out of college? They'll just major in gender studies and load up with 200 grand in debt, and then they're screwed. So it's, I think there needs to be more education, financial education in high school, to say, look, maybe not the best idea if you're going to go to school and, take out so much debt to study English or something. Jimmy T says, what time did we start tonight? I checked around 8 and didn't see this. Yeah, so Jimmy, I apologize. I was working extremely late at the office tonight, so we actually started around 9:30. So really, really late, so I do apologize. That one is on me. We started really late tonight. Sabrina Fair says, hey Tom, the focus needs to be on STEM. Yeah, I mean, definitely very, very good major, all the STEM stuff. Sabrina Fair, good to see you. Cove Creeks is electrical troubleshooter, and I make 100K with overtime. Yeah, so Cove Creek, a lot of the trades are fantastic, phenomenal. That's awesome. Yeah, maybe you want to go and learn a trade, get an apprenticeship. So maybe you want to get out of college, or maybe you want to get out of high school and get an apprenticeship somewhere, right? Where you can learn a fundamental skill like Cove Creek did. Maybe you could do something like that. I think that's a fantastic idea. That's a really, really good idea, actually. Mohammed says, hey Tom, Harvard is the best university, but the tuition is expensive. So here's my take on that. I think if you're smart enough, like if you get into Harvard or any of the Ivy Leagues, I think you should go regardless of the price. And I'll tell you why. Because the people you are going to meet at those Ivy League institutions come from some of the most, I don't really want to say powerful, but the kids that are going to Harvard, Yale, and all the Ivy Leagues, these are the sons and daughters of Fortune 500 companies, CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, right? Public, executives at publicly traded institutions. So I think you should go just for the networking stuff if you're going to go at all to an Ivy League institution, because the people you're going to meet there are just the smartest people to ever walk the face of the earth. So I think it is worth it to do that, in my view. The Mighty Bull is still here. Thank you, Mighty Bull. Yeah, Cove Creek says, and we are still looking for labor. Yeah, so Cove Creek, to your point, there is an extreme shortage of laborers in this economy. And we've actually been seeing a lot of that in the housing data. So a lot of the single-family home builders are saying they're having an extremely, extremely hard time hiring tradesmen and people that are skilled, electricians, things like that. So you're 100% right. But here's everybody leaving the Miami Heat game. I'm not sure, from the looks of it, if the game is still going on and people are exiting. It's probably not the best outcome.
Guys, you gotta go right. All right, there. You gotta cross nice. All the way down nice. Come back up. All the way to there. I can't go that way? No, traffic's coming out, then it'll stop. That's for your safety. That's why the chains are there. Okay. All right, I'll stay on this side.
David Pershing, this is a story in my local paper last week that the son, story in my local paper last week that the son of Russia's wealthiest man at CMU for master studies. Esg series tied at 1 apiece. So we have to cross the street anyway because I have to go over here to get the bus. So I will take you guys with me. Yeah, Nicholas is like, listen to everybody's southern accent. I do hear it. The more people I talk to down here, I hear it for sure. Gregory says CMU is a good uni, yeah. BP says Miami smashed more 20 points just like Dallas did yesterday. But guys, I think we covered a lot in this short stream. I think we covered a lot. We talked about ESG. We talked about Tesla getting kicked out. We talked about student loans. I think it was a productive conversation. But just let me focus on crossing the street here a minute. because everybody's going to start pouring out of the game. Hey, Tony Lagos is here. Says, hey, my friend, how are you? Lovely walk. I'm doing really good. Thank you so much for being here. Photos from around New York. Hey, photos from around New York. I heard it's going to be like 90 degrees in New York City this weekend. Looking forward to that 100%. So I'm going to be in Atlantic City, New Jersey on Tuesday. Have to be in an event, cybersecurity event. Yeah, so after the game, they close off this main road here. So I have to go all the way around and get the bus on the other side. Jimmy T is like, hey Tom, any dolphins tonight? No, we didn't see any. None. No dolphins at all, unfortunately. Yeah, photos from around New York says it will be a scorcher. Well, it was a scorcher here today. It was like 80 degrees, but with the humidity and the bright sun, it probably felt like 95. So if that's the case, maybe this weekend, if I'm back in New York, we will bring out the skateboard. Maybe we will do a 3-hour skateboarding stream at night. We'll see. I'm not sure if I'm going to get my flight on Saturday or early Monday. I guess it just really depends on the cost of the price of the flights. Chris Beeman says, is your birthday coming up soon? It is. My birthday is May 25th. Yeah, photos around the years like sunscreen, sunscreen, sunscreen. Tony Lagos, good to have you here. So I think everybody's usually walking to the Omni, which is probably where I should be walking to as well, actually. Gene Paul says, hey Tom, it was 92 degrees here in Southern Florida. It definitely felt like it. You know, there was not a cloud in the sky up until about 5 o'clock. It was a scorcher. Jerry says, tell something about yourself. My birthday is May 25th. But Jerry, I work in tech sales. BP says, imagine bought 20K front seat. That's how much they cost, BP? So BP says, imagine you bought a $20,000 seat ticket at the Miami Heat, lost the game. I didn't know that the tickets were that much. That's crazy. Well, I thought like the box seats were maybe that. Wow, look at everybody coming out. So how many games are there left to play? I don't even know. I know that they're playing the Boston Celtics because there was a lot of people in the WeWork today with Boston hats on. Wow, a ton of people coming out. Psychic says 20K is real courtside price. Yeah, courtside are like the box seats. Does anybody know how many people this stadium holds? Do you think it holds over 40,000 people? How many people do you think the FTX Arena holds? I'm gonna guess. I'll say 25,000 people. I was close. Gene Paul says 20,000.
That was quarter to New York did it.
I was close. I was 5,000 off. Wow, Arnold says definitely over 40K. Deborah says it's 21,000. Got it. British Gray 50,000. So I think there is one sports stadium that holds 50,000 people. It actually may be a college football stadium, I forget. Hey, Weird Al Ali says it's 21,000. Good to see you.
Celtics fans are garbage people.
Jerry says $12,000 seats. I'm not sure if we'd be allowed to stream inside the arena. Probably not. Probably be a copyright, right? So usually I get the bus here, but obviously the roads are closed off, so I gotta walk 2 more blocks over, and then the bus will go around and up through the Omni. Yeah, Gene Paul says, Tom, football stadiums are over 70,000 people. And Talfish is here, says, hey Tom, good to see you. Wendy says Madison Square Garden is under 21,000. I would think it would be more actually, but the number one thing that everybody's been telling me I gotta do down here is go to a University of Miami football game. I've never been to a college football game. Don Smith says, hey Tom from Michigan, good to see you, Don. Well, it definitely looks like over it definitely looks like over 21,000 people pouring out of here. Yeah, Sarah G's like, you should go. Wow. There's a lot of people coming out. Wow, look at them all. It's like a sea of people. Deborah says they look like Celtics fans. I think everybody's wearing white. I believe the white is the Miami Heat colors, is it not? I think the white is the Heat home colors, and I think the black and red is the away jersey, perhaps. Kaiser says, hey Tom, Michigan and Ohio State can pack over 100,000 people into a football stadium. Insane. Psychic says, Tom, white is Miami Heat playoffs colors. You know, there may seem like there's a lot of foot traffic here now, but on a normal day, there's actually not that much. I think the only real foot traffic they get down here is the game. University of Miami Hard Rock Stadium has 67,000 people. Wow. Yeah, I definitely got to check it out. Herbert is here, says, hey Tom, the capacity is 21,000, full house tonight. Herbert, thank you for being here, and thank you for the donation once again, much appreciated. Well, it's a beautiful night out here. It was actually supposed to rain and a little bit of a thunderstorm, but everything held off. Hey, DM is here, says, hey Tom, the Heat has to win 4 of 7 games. Wow. You know, I'm gonna check how much the tickets are. I mean, if they're under $100, maybe I'll go. I've never been to a basketball game in my life. Yogi says 20-point win. If the tickets are under $100, maybe I'll go, and maybe we'll stream on the inside of the arena. We won't stream the game, obviously, but maybe we'll stream the inside of the arena. Jimmy T says loud and drunk must be Boston fans.
Yes.
Well, I don't think there's much of a big rivalry, right, between Miami and Boston. I think if it was like maybe the Knicks or Boston or something like that, it'd be a little bit more crazy. You know, yeah, Psychics, like if you get cheap tickets, you can buy them in advance. You know what I was thinking about? I was thinking about going to a Yankee game, and you could actually get tickets for like $15 if you sit in the bleacher seats. I mean, they're not good seats, but it's fun to spend $15 to go to a Yankee game, I guess.
Let's go Celtics!
I probably shouldn't have came this way. So they said back to the Garden. Does that mean they're playing in Madison Square Garden? There's no way, right? If there is, we'll see a lot of these people. We're going to be back in New York next week. Photos from around New York's like Tom. StubHub has some super cheap tickets. How much are they going for out of curiosity, photos? Yeah, Amanda Lynn says, Tom, so much traffic. I think I'm going to wait to get the next bus because it's... why would I get this bus when I'm just going to sit in all this traffic? Deborah says, no, it's the TD Garden in Boston. That makes more sense. Yeah, if you guys couldn't tell, I'm not much of a sports person, but... But I do have to get into golf because I have to start taking a lot of clients out now. And everybody's been asking, hey, do you golf? We should go golfing. I'm like, yeah, of course I go golfing, of course. So that's a work in progress. Psychic says, Tom, I got tickets for $80. Way in the nosebleeds, but still worth it. That's, I mean, to go to a game like that, it's packed. I'd spend $80 to do that. The next game, if it's under $100, I'll go and I'll stream the inside. Obviously not the game, so we don't get the channel taken down, but just to see what the inside of the arena looks like, we'll do that. If it's under $100. Jerry says, hey, is your real name Tom or is that your nickname? No, that is my real name. Amanda says, do you track how many miles you walk every day? So we usually do anywhere between 20,000 and 25. And 25,000 steps. So 20,000 and 25,000 steps a night. We usually tend to do more steps in New York City than Miami, but Matthew's like, sounds like Tom is being thrifty. Yeah, I mean, well, now that I don't really work for a company, my T&E budget is all in my personal pocket. So if I spend $2-3 grand to take clients out a month, I mean, that's all out of me. I mean, it could be a big cash burn, but I mean, at my old company, we had a card. You know, my boss was like, here's the card, take them out, do whatever you got to do. But, you know, the T&E budget is my bank account now. NMB 045 says people with headphones on right now. Chris says, Tom, take golf lessons. They can show you how to swing correctly. So last summer, I played at Bethpage, one of the best golf courses in the world. Bethpage Black Course. I didn't play the black course, obviously. I think I played the blue course. I was horrible, but it was a good time. Bethpage is close to my house. Google says 20,000 steps equals 8.5 miles. I think that's right. That sounds about right. Because in New York, we usually do 25,000. On a crazy night, we could do 30,000 steps, which I think is right at around that half marathon mark. But I remember last summer during the skateboarding streams, sometimes we would do a full marathon in one night, 26 miles in a night. I think our record was about 30, and we streamed for like 3.5 hours, 30 miles. Hey, SD Rob says, why would they put an indoor arena on the water and open air ballpark inland? I'm not sure. Faith is here. Good to see you, Faith. Hope you're well. And happy early Friday, everybody. Tish TV's like, Tom just watched Tiger Woods' old videos. Yeah, we could do that too. You know, this building here, I believe, is going to be a brand new luxury apartment building. And I think the studios are going to start. So the starting price of studios are going to be $600,000. Isn't that insane? Faith says, I'm good, Tom. You sound well yourself. Yeah, I'm doing good. I will be back in New York City next week. Well, Atlantic City, New Jersey. But I'll be around. I'll be in the city. Jerry says, can you speak other languages too? I'm learning Spanish and Korean. So Spanish and Korean in the process of learning. Jimmy T says, wow, good to see you, Jimmy T. Yeah, I thought the same thing myself. I mean, those are like Manhattan prices, right? But then again, I think one of my really good friends from the stream sent me some information on the building. Even though the amenities are fantastic, I still think a little bit pricey for a studio at $600,000, but I believe it's going to be this one, probably because it includes a pool, a gym, everything. But $600,000 for a studio is a little steep, especially for Miami. But I think what's going on here is a lot of developers are building these ultra luxury apartment buildings that have so many amenities. So the majority of the price is probably just you're paying for the amenities. Maybe you'll have a restaurant inside the building, concierge staff, swimming pools, movie theaters. So I think they're sort of charging a premium price just for all the stuff that they give you. But still, I'm not sure if I would pay that. Perry says, hey Tom, are you talking about the Waldorf Astoria? So no, but that's also going to be another expensive building too. So Perry, you make a good point. The Waldorf Astoria is actually going to be the tallest residential building south of One World Trade Center in Manhattan, which is going to look crazy. I mean, these buildings look really, really tall because they're so close to the water. I mean, can you imagine what that's going to look like? That's going to be wild. Wow, Miami Walking and Driving Tours says they are getting more for them because they are allowing Airbnb as well. Well, I think Airbnb is good for the vast majority of people if you don't abuse it. I think if you don't host parties and go too crazy with it, I think Airbnb is a really, really good way to allow people that originally wouldn't have a path to home ownership to have a path. Because if you could have some of the tenants subsidize the cost of the property, I think that's a good move and a win-win. But everybody, we will end it right here. I know it's a very short stream tonight, only about an hour and 45 minutes, but we did start late. That's my bad. I'll take responsibility for that. But we will be back live 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here in Magic City. So if you liked what you saw tonight on the stream and you want to come back for more, we'll see you right here, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be kicking it off right outside of the Southeast Financial Center right here. So appreciate everybody joining. Chris Beeman, thank you so much. NMB045, I saw your email. Absolutely, let's link up when you're in New York, my friend. I would love that. Omar is here. Thank you so much. Mel, I appreciate it. Jimmy T, DWG, thank you so much for joining. If you guys liked the stream tonight, leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel. Line Sync, thank you. Sally, Faith, always appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'll be back in New York. Psychic, thank you. British Gray, Amanda, Mohammed. And if you want to sign up for the Behind the Street newsletter, if you type !news NEWS, or just look the first link in the description. If you click it, sign up for the newsletter. I'll send you a free investing newsletter talking about US equity markets as well as emerging markets and fixed income. So please check that out as well in the description. Samantha R, appreciate it. We will see you next time. Wendy, Amanda, photos from around New York, Diamond Dave. Thank you, Mr. Ming, the Mighty Bull. Have a good night wherever you are, because there's always a bull market somewhere, and you just need to know where to look. And I'll see everybody right back here, Eastern Standard Time, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, tomorrow.